right, welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that they are living in a modern-day spiritual paradise. I am your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, and a kid raised as a Jehovah's Witness in the 70s and 80s. As I do, just a warning, there can be things that trigger some of you dear folks, all of us, to be honest, but the sarcasm, humor, and a brand of experience is never meant to offend. I want to apologize from the outset. I am dealing with a cold, and you can probably hear it. I apologize for that. Not fun stuff as the weather has turned cold here, and can't let that stop us, right? So here we are. I mentioned a few weeks ago that many times I turn on this microphone despite the feeling that this has all been said before. And the religion is changing so rapidly that much of my experience of the past doesn't seem to apply as much as it might to younger generations. With each passing annual meeting, JW broadcast, or Caleb and Sophia video, you know I love those, it's glaringly apparent that the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses live in a black hole of complete delusion. And the beards and pants and changing doctrines aren't the distraction they think they are for those of us that have spent a lifetime in their religion and found a way to free our critical thinking, or in most cases, basic human common sense. An argument could be made that basic self-awareness is completely lost on Jesus' latest version of his earthly kings, but I present a second opinion. They know what they're doing. Their current spiritual food, given at the proper time, is some of the most insultingly stupid stuff you will ever read or listen to. Unless you take a minute to consider that even they aren't this stupid. Maybe, I don't know. I can neither confirm nor deny. I believe much of what they're spewing these days is calculated. That's a fact. I think they know what they're doing. They know they're lying and twisting almost any subject matter to create support for them and their organization, especially during the last 4 or 5 years where they seem to be hemorrhaging members more than ever before. But just when I thought I'd seen so many examples of this the last 20 years that nothing could possibly surprise me, I stumble on something so patently absurd. No, it's not pyramids or overlapping generations or Jeffrey Jackson lying to the world on the stand in Australia, but I gotta say it's pretty damn close. So absurd that I felt like I needed to make a few comments. So here we are, even me with a bad cold. You may be thinking, what the hell did he find this time? Are they finally recognizing gay people have a right to be in love and together? Is it a good idea to get a college education now? Does preaching to your neighbors that they need to agree with 11 men in New York, or those men will soon go to heaven, stand alongside Jesus of the Gospels, and take part in killing them? Is it that? Should a minor child who can't sign a legal contract actually get baptized? Have they finally discovered what contraception Noah was using that allowed his wife to not get pregnant for 500 years? Did we even learn her name? Sorry to disappoint, it's none of the above. I don't mean to disappoint you. I'm genuinely sorry if you're listening with the hopes of undiscovered recordings of Noah's sons privately bitching about having to hunt down and round up skunks. Nope, I don't have them. No one does. But I've got something here that I think is equally absurd. This one just makes me look at all those innocent, if not intellectually napping Jehovah's Witnesses with proof that they read nothing, they study very little, that they continue to just show up to kingdom halls and kind of nod their heads. It's what they're used to. At last, allow me to introduce to you yet another nugget of Holy Spirit on Jesus Only website. It's currently featured under the article series, More another nugget of Holy Spirit on Only Jesus website. Sorry. It's under the article series, More Topics, and it's an article that almost caused me to break a rib. And that was just from reading the title, because the title says it all. Maybe this is how Adam felt when Jehovah inexplainably made him out of dirt, but needed one of his ribs to make a woman. I got no idea, but I almost broke one laughing. Nonetheless, on to the article. I'd like you to consider the title. The title that made me stop and laugh. It's entitled Tolerance, How the Bible Can Help. I'm still laughing. Tolerance, the Bible? Can we say those two words in the same sentence? Apparently we can now. I'm going to cut myself some slack on this holiday weekend here in the United States. I'm going to really try not to laugh my entire way through this. In case my audio was bad, yes, an article written by Jehovah's Witnesses, specifically the governing body and the writing committee, again, reminder, as a message from Jesus himself, so they tell us, and it is titled Tolerance, How the Bible Can Help. Yep. We're going to discuss their claims regarding tolerance, why a Jehovah's Witness should have it, and their assertion that the Bible, that Bible, is a book preaching tolerance. So buckle up or turn this episode off right now, because we have officially entered something that goes beyond intellectually insulting and into a black hole of how truly stupid these men in upstate New York are. A warning is in order. I'm not pulling any punches with the insults on this one. I'm going to be myself. To even have this put out into the universe is so incredibly ignorant, it deserves every salty comment it gets. The Bible and tolerance, and how those two things impact Jehovah's Witnesses. So let's start strong. If you personally had to summarize the beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses in a couple of sentences, what would you say? How would you explain it? If you had to explain why Jehovah's Witnesses preach, at least they used to, currently stand in front of book carts, only date or marry other Jehovah's Witnesses, and so much more, would you be able to explain why? Well, let me see if I can help. Scratch that. Let's see what they have to say in their own words. From the Watchtower of September 1st, 1989, page 19, we're told this, quote, "Only Jehovah's Witnesses, those of the anointed remnant and the great crowd as a united organization under the protection of the supreme organizer, have any scriptural hope of surviving the impending end of this doomed system dominated by Satan the devil." End quote. Wow. There's the assertion. Again, remember I asked, could you sum up why they preach? What the entire reason is that they knock on doors, and why we still exist today if we're a Jehovah's Witness in 2024? Well, they just told us they're the only ones who will live through Armageddon. From the Watchtower of 2001, February 15th, page 14, we're told this, quote, "In fact, with God's day of judgment so near today, all the world should keep silent before the sovereign Lord Jehovah and hear what he says through the little flock of Jesus' anointed followers and their companions, his other sheep. Annihilation awaits all who will not listen and who thereby set themselves against rule by God's kingdom." End quote. Okay, we're off to a strong start. Very tolerant indeed, wouldn't you say? From the beginning, the entire foundation, the entire reason Jehovah's Witnesses are still here with the last days that never end, is to preach to people because they can't tolerate anything that isn't associated with Jehovah's Witnesses. Therefore, anyone who doesn't agree with them will die. And we're discussing tolerance. By the way, here is my explanation of what Jehovah's Witnesses believe in a couple of sentences. I've said it for years. And I came up with this. I literally came up with this when I was a teenager. So I was clearly doomed to be an apostate at some point anyway. Each time I went to a door in the field ministry, and for you younger people that might be listening, Jehovah's Witnesses actually used to knock on doors. We actually had to explain the Bible. We actually had to read it and explain it. We didn't even know what tablets were. We didn't know. But again, I'd knock, and in my head, I'd be thinking, quote, "Hi, I'm Stacy. I'm right. Here's why you're wrong. And if you don't become a baptized Jehovah's Witness, you're going to die at Armageddon." Wait, what? You're not interested? Well, I've done my duty here. Best of luck dodging fireballs. End quote. That's it. That's my summary of the tolerance that we're here considering of Jehovah's Witnesses. It didn't matter what the message was, the Watchtower article that weekend, or anything else. I had figured out that it came down to that simple explanation. I'm right, you're wrong, agree with me, or die. And I figured that out as a kid. And while they've done some slight tweaking to their doctrines, would we call it slight tweaking? For those of us old enough to remember, things like now, during the annual meeting of over a year ago, you can now suddenly convert to being a Jehovah's Witness during the Great Tribulation, raising a ton of questions like, I don't know, why don't we all just wait until it's obvious Jehovah's Witnesses are the only religion left, then we can all join? I guess they didn't think that through, but they changed things. And so now you can apparently survive during the Great Tribulation, meaning the preaching work is useless. Being a witness is a moot point. It's all stupid. Just wait until the sky turns red and only Stephen Lett is standing. Then we know he was right. Let's be a witness. But the message has always been clear, despite even the tweaking. I just read you 2 references from the Watchtower, and the message is simple. Get on board or die. That's it. That's the whole message. You see, it's all very tolerant. It's very tolerant of other people who don't agree. We're here going to teach you, as a Jehovah's Witness rolling up to the website, what it means to be tolerant for a religion that can't spell the word tolerant. But maybe we need to review what the definition of tolerance is. Fair enough. Maybe the governing body has received new light from Jesus up there in the cosmos, and we have this whole idea of what tolerance means. Well, look, we got it wrong. It's them, after all, and they're smarter than the rest of us. So, I mean, it's worth a shot, right, to consider this? Well, let's let them tell us once again, from the secular sources of planet Earth, what tolerance means. From the Oxford Languages Dictionary, we are told tolerant is an adjective, and it means showing willingness to allow the existence of opinions or behavior that one does not necessarily agree with. We're off to a strong start. The Britannica Dictionary definition of tolerant tells us this, quote, willing to accept feelings, habits, or beliefs that are different from your own, end quote. I mean, this sounds like Jehovah's Witnesses, right? From the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, quote, sympathy or indulgence for beliefs or practices differing from or conflicting with one's own, end quote. My goodness. And finally, From the American Psychological Association Dictionary of Psychology, the definition, quote, a fair and objective attitude toward points of view different from one's own, end quote. So I gave 4 definitions of tolerant or tolerance, as this article on the website is going to tell us what it means. Are we clear on what the definition of tolerance is? Good. So moving forward, I want to emphasize that the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses is now going to teach us what it means to be tolerant. You heard that correctly. Is that ironic to you? Not only do these men present themselves as bastions of tolerance, but they're going to show us with an ancient book, their Bible, how we can be, wait for it, just like them, tolerant of other people's views, tolerance of other people's beliefs or practices, tolerance all the way around. At this point, if you've ever been a Jehovah's Witness, you're either laughing out loud or you're saying, WTF. But you haven't seen anything yet. How about dissecting this article on the website together? Because it just gets better. The absurdity starts right from the beginning. Even a lazy Jehovah's Witness that never studies but has a basic knowledge of this organization and its doctrines knows that this is off the rails. Tolerance isn't a word you associate with Jehovah's Witnesses. It's crystal clear to me that one of the most respected departments back there in New York is clearly now the Public Relations Department. That's the only reason you could remotely think about writing an article on tolerance when you're Jehovah's Witnesses. This article was probably written on a request from the governing body or the PR department. It's another one of those stupid, smaller articles apparently meant as spiritual finger food. So here we go. The opening paragraphs say the following, quote, tolerance is the virtue that makes peace possible. That is a quote from the UNESCO Declaration of Principles on Tolerance, 1995. Intolerance, on the other hand, can produce disrespect and even hatred. Such inner feelings often escalate into hate speech, discrimination, and violence. But people have different ideas about what tolerance involves. You don't say. Quote, back to the quote, some believe that tolerant people must express personal approval of all types of practices and behavior. Others take the view, supported by the Bible, that tolerant people respect each one's right to choose his own values and beliefs, even if they themselves disapprove of those values and beliefs. Can the Bible help people to be truly tolerant in the modern world? End quote. Oh no, wait. Trust me, I'm going to get to the claim that the Bible supports anything that resembles tolerance. You've got to be kidding me. But please note from the outset that these guys have set the stage for full support for the Jehovah's Witness lifestyle by slipping in the comment, quote, but people have different ideas about what tolerance involves, end quote. We get it. Groundwork has been laid. From the beginning, the separation begins. Our definition of tolerance may not be your definition of tolerance. You don't say. And I can assure you, they're right. They're absolutely right. By the time I'm done babbling, I'm sure you too will have a few questions about how you or they define tolerance. I read right from secular sources. But what follows is just so patently absurd. I don't know how this stuff even makes it out to the rest of us. How did this see the light of day? Jehovah's Witnesses and the Bible are bastions of tolerance. I'm going to do my best here to hit the highlights, not just as interesting content, but to shine a light on how incredibly deceitful these men are. Remember, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you already know this is absurd. If you're someone looking in, you're curious, you're not quite sure. But going back to the Jehovah's Witnesses who might be bravely listening, please give this some thought. Some thought, excuse me. This article is a prime example of what I call Christianity a la carte. Taking one thing, leaving the other, because on the subject of tolerance, they start in the only place they know, the Bible. The Bible? The Bible is going to teach us tolerance. Have they read it? And see if you can spot the absurdity. The article goes on to say this, quote, "The Bible's basis for tolerance," is the subheading. The first statement is this, quote, "The Bible promotes tolerance." It says, "Let your reasonableness become known to all men," Philippians 4:5. What? The Bible encourages us to treat others in a considerate, courteous, and fair way. Those who apply this advice may not agree with or adopt another person's values, but they allow that one to behave according to his or her own choice. End quote. The Bible, as a book, promotes tolerance, folks. Back to the article, quote, "The Bible, however, reveals that God has standards for human behavior." What does that have to do with tolerance? They never explain it. Quote, "It states, God has told you, O man, what is good. It reveals God's direction, given to help people enjoy the best life possible." Isaiah 48:17 and 18 is quoted. God does not authorize us to judge others. End quote for a moment. We've got a problem. Do I need to explain Jehovah's Witnesses and judging others? Do I really need to explain that? Probably not. But it goes to the heart of this content. Back to the quote, "According to the Bible, there is only one who is lawgiver and judge." Only one? I thought there were 11. "Who are you to be judging your neighbor?" from James 4:12. Good question. God allows each one of us the freedom to make choices for which we are personally responsible. End quote. How did this article see the light of day? How did they do this? If you're keeping track at home, the governing body just said that the Bible promotes tolerance. If you've read the book, you know where I'm going with this. And of course, by extension, so do they. Because, well, the Bible was written for them after all, and they just translate it for the rest of us lowly paradise hopefuls. But there is so much to unpack about this organization within the first couple of paragraphs that I'm sure we don't even have time. First and foremost, did they just say that the Bible promotes tolerance? The Bible. What? Are they reading the same Bible the rest of us are? I've read the Bible 7 times, and I have to tell you, I could describe it in many, many ways. But one word that never has come into my mind to describe the Bible is tolerance. Is it possible for the 11 men who Jesus directs here on earth to have missed the entire point of the Bible? They couldn't have done that, right? From the opening few chapters of the Holy Book, we see a lot of intolerance, tons of it, overshadowed by some very strange tolerance. It's really unexplainable. God won't tolerate Adam and Eve eating from the pretty tree he made and then pointed out to them. He also won't tolerate them being anything but naked. He does watch on and take zero action. Apparently, he tolerates this. One of his invisible kids climb into a snake, still say that was an odd choice, lots of animals, and talk to his new, vulnerable, baby-brained, inexperienced human kids. I guess he did tolerate that, huh? But those dumb kids eat from the pretty tree, and well, from the beginning, Jehovah decides he can't tolerate that. So he has a plan. There's a lot of tolerance, a lot of intolerance. He's going to punish all the kids that weren't even there to begin with. Doesn't that sound fair? These two made a mistake. Let's make everybody pay. But maybe this example of tolerance in action is overdone on this show, and you're sick of hearing about it. Well, how about a few more examples of how the Bible promotes tolerance as they are stating in this website article? You may already realize there are many examples of tolerance to choose from. And this article just told us, it says, "Let your reasonableness become known to all men," from Philippians 4:5. I gotta tell you, I like reasonable. Do you like reasonable? I don't think reasonable and tolerance are the same thing, but let's go with it. They claim it is. That's how they're applying the scripture. Reasonableness and tolerance go hand in hand. So what do you make then, again, of the Bible, their assertion, I should say, that the Bible is a book promoting tolerance? How about another example from 1 Samuel 15, 2 and 3 of the New World Translation? Did I mention it enough? This is from the Bible. The same book they said is a bastion of tolerance for other people, allowing people to have their own beliefs, feelings, and actions. 1 Samuel 15, 2 and 3. God, what an example. It says this, quote, "This is what Jehovah of armies says. I will call to account the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they opposed them along their way coming up from Egypt. Now go and strike down the Amalekites and devote them to destruction along with all that they have. You must not spare them. You are to put them to death, man as well as woman, child as well as infant, bull as well as sheep, camel as well as donkey." End quote. Very tolerant indeed. I can see where the governing body is going with this. The Bible is filled with tolerance, and it's very reasonable to boot, right? Jehovah and the Israelites were just practicing tolerance after all. You'll note they weren't even in the neighborhood. They were so tolerant, they went looking for the Amalekites, so they could very reasonably, remember the application, slaughter women and infants. Thanks for having that recorded so we could picture that in our brains as kids, Jehovah. Thank you. It's very tolerant. Let's slaughter babies. True tolerance knows no bounds when it comes to the Bible. I know it can be tough, by the way. I think we can all relate, especially moms out there. It can be tough to listen to a colicky baby cry all night, but I'm sure glad I wasn't more tolerant, or that I was more tolerant than Jehovah when my son was born. But while you're at it, don't forget to kill the donkeys, the sheep, the camels, and the bulls, because tolerance and stuff. The Bible's very tolerant. Thank you for pointing me to the Bible as a book that promotes tolerance and what a Jehovah's Witness can learn about tolerating others in 2024. You couldn't have made a stronger comment in this article. The Bible, quote, I want to really emphasize this, quote, "The Bible promotes tolerance." Does it now? And just in case you think that's just one example, and that I've just missed all the tolerance Jehovah was promoting in his book, don't forget about this very special tidbit he had recorded for you and me, and anyone who'll read the book, when we were struggling ourselves with being tolerant about that kid in class who was celebrating birthdays and we can't. Such tolerance. How about this tidbit? This is one I leaned on. From Judges chapter 1 and verse 4 of the New World Translation. Quote, when Judah went up, Jehovah gave the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hands, and they defeated 10,000 men in Bezek. End quote. You see, when someone comes on your property, promised land or not, tolerance doesn't include just asking them to leave. You don't just, hey, can you get out of my driveway? No, the tolerance of the Bible means a mass slaughter. And so Jehovah had them kill 10,000 men. Yeah, I guess he had tolerated them long enough. Behold, the Bible promoting tolerance according to the governing body on the website this week. But I'm not done, and I'm sorry. You know me. I have one more example. It's a favorite, by the way. It's a favorite. I want to underline that. One more example for you on Jehovah tolerating things and how the Bible is a book promoting tolerance, as the article says. From that same account, Judges 1, 6, and 7, here's one I leaned on when I saw a kid at Halloween and I just had to tolerate him. Here's one that I'd lean on. Judges 1, 6, and 7, quote, when Adonabezek, flunk that on the theocratic school, when Adonabezek fled, they chased him and caught him tolerance. Okay, what comes next is very tolerant. Quote, and they cut off his thumbs and his big toes. Then Adonabezek said, there are 70 kings whose thumbs and big toes were cut off, and who are picking up food under my table. Just as I have done, so God has repaid me. After that, they brought him to Jerusalem, and he died there. End quote. He sure did. He died there, but the good news is he died with no thumbs or big toes. The Bible, a book promoting tolerance. This website article is sure hitting the mark on all things tolerance. They just said tolerance means, remember, being reasonable. And well, Jehovah has taught me what being reasonable looks like. In this case, being reasonable means that you've killed 10,000 people. But the fun isn't over. The fun isn't over. Let's chase down the survivors. Let's cut off the king's thumbs and his big toes, too. I imagine there are more than a few tolerant elders, I might add, that would love the power to do this in a judicial meeting. What were these 70 kings doing? Picking their nose in public or scratching their butts? I mean, wow. Let's be honest. This article is spot on with how the Bible promotes tolerance, isn't it? I'll bet you're never going to look at your thumbs and big toes. Those big toes are sure attractive. You're never going to look at them the same. Because Jehovah had it recorded in his book how much he tolerated these guys. And he likes collecting thumbs and toes. Oh, man. How did this article see the light of day? I could give hundreds of other examples. Hundreds. There are so many more. I picked a few favorites. But the clowns in upstate New York turned to this book to teach the rest of us how to treat other people we don't agree with. Or who let their dog poop in our yard and didn't pick it up. Or people who pick their nose. In the first 3 paragraphs of this article, they prove what they are. Really dumb. Really dumb. But remember, those paragraphs quoted Micah 6:8 of the Old Testament as the story I just told, which says, quote, God has told you, oh man, what is good, end quote. He sure has. He sure has. His tolerance is so rock solid that he, even after he killed 10,000 men, he chased a few stragglers down and cut off their thumbs and big toes. Why? We're not entirely sure. He make a necklace, some soup, nobody knows. The Bible doesn't mention it. All of this we're led to believe is because they didn't want the Israelites living on their land. True tolerance for your neighbor, I might add. True tolerance. This insanely stupid article continues with a section titled, What the Bible Says About Respect. I'm not going to cover all of it, but it does contain one of my favorite Bible stories, one that I dedicated an entire episode on this show to in the past, and I recommend listening to it. It's fun. It's a very, very fun one to take apart because it completely condemns the governing body. It completely proves how wrong they are. One story. This one simple story completely obliterates any claim that the leadership of Jehovah's Witnesses in any way are tolerant. It says the following in the article and the story, quote, for example, Jesus once met a woman who practiced a religion that he did not agree with. This woman was also living with a man who was not her husband, a lifestyle that Jesus did not condone. Still, he spoke to the woman with respect. John chapter 4, end quote. You likely recognize the story if you're a witness. It's found there, as I mentioned, in John chapter 4. It's the story of the Samaritan woman at the well. Excellent story for obliterating this religion. I'm not going to reread it, but it's absolutely fascinating that this story found its way into an article about tolerance. Of all the stories involving Jesus, they decided to mention this one? Really? Are you sure? Fascinating. Why? Well, please remember, this article is showing us how the Bible promotes tolerance, and they couldn't have shared a better story, and not one the governing body apparently seems to understand. It makes them look like the charlatans that they are. You see, the Samaritans were distant family to the Israelites. They descended from the northern 10-tribe kingdom. They were cousins or intermarried, and they were all kind of part of the same family. They came from the Israelites, as I mentioned, and they had mixed with other peoples, and then, of course, they had started their other religion. They set up altars in the northern 10-tribe kingdom. Arguably, by definition, we would have called them apostates. Uh-oh. In the case of this story, not only was this woman an apostate, but she was also living in sin, having been married 5 times, the Bible tells us. But now, when Jesus is talking to her, she's living with a man out of wedlock. Imagine that. What does all of this mean for a Jehovah's Witness who's reading the website article and wanting to practice tolerance? What does it mean? Well, allow me to spell it out. Jesus was apparently so tolerant that he spoke to apostates. He's doing it right there in John chapter 4. In fact, he did it in his entire ministry. The Jews were apostates. And she wasn't just any apostate, but one that was fornicating. Can you imagine? Oh my God. Look, we get the message. The governing body is trying to land with this article. I know what they're kind of alluding to. Be nice to people you don't agree with. Okay, I think most of us are. But how about we ask the same of them? Does that seem reasonable to you? I mean, they've pulled this story in John chapter 4, this example from the Bible, and in this story, gotta tell you, no one lost their thumbs or toes. That's a start. And it seems to just be basic human respect and kindness. You learn it in kindergarten. I like mushrooms. You hate mushrooms. Guess what? We could still be friends. Would you look at that? Would you look at that? I didn't even need to kill any donkeys to figure it out. But, well, in fairness, I am an apostate. one like Jesus is speaking to in John 4 in this article on tolerance. I'm fascinated that he continued to even lean into this story, but even more so to attempt to prove what tolerance looks like. Jehovah's Witnesses are commanded to shun apostates or people that don't agree with the governing body. People who just want to leave the religion because they got baptized at 10, they're 20, and they know it's a bunch of crap. But it's a command to shun them. There are thousands nursing unbelievable pain at this very moment because family members of Jehovah's Witnesses are shunning them. For what crime? They don't believe the 11 guys on the governing body have any right to tell men where to grow hair on their body for decades. That's it. In hundreds and hundreds of other doctrinal changes, they just see through it. Or even lies, medical lies that have gotten people killed. You see, like mushrooms, but they don't. So, I like mushrooms, I should say, but the governing body doesn't, so we can't be friends. And I want to remind you at this point, this is tolerance. This is tolerance. They're not possibly trying to say, well, you can't run them over with your car. We'll do that at Armageddon. But in the meantime, just, pretend like they're dead. They want to talk about tolerance. By the way, that makes us just like the Samaritan woman at the well. Those of us that have left, we apostates, those who don't agree with them, we're just like her. She was dedicated into this religion. She apostatized. Didn't stop Jesus from telling this apostate Samaritan woman, did I mention she's also a woman? He was talking to an apostate, a stranger, and a woman, something Jewish men did not do in that time. They didn't do. And did I mention that she was the very first person in the Bible filled with tolerance? She was the first person he admitted to being the Messiah to, not another man, an apostate. A female, an apostate, and by their standards, a whore. I'm the Messiah. Huh. So I have a question. Would a JW elder tell one of us apostates a secret like that today? Would they? Because they're so, tolerant and stuff? We all know the answer. I simply can't believe they even include John chapter 4 in anything to explain their belief system. It obliterates Jehovah's Witnesses. A simple story that obliterates the entire intolerant religion. The article on the website then jumps to a section titled Bible Verses Related to Tolerance and Respect. Oh no. And the Organization of Jehovah's Witnesses claims these verses prove how tolerant they are, and the rest of us should be too. However, when comparing these verses and their comments to the reality of Jehovah's Witnesses, the problems begin. In fact, it is an avalanche of problems. Problems that prove most Jehovah's Witnesses have chosen a path of ignorance and have simply shut their brains down by design. You simply cannot read almost anything in the Bible and compare it to the history of Jehovah's Witnesses and not be left wondering how the hell this article ever saw the light of day. For one, the Bible is not a book of tolerance. For two, neither are Jehovah's Witnesses. I only have time for a couple of the scriptures they mention here on the website, followed up by comments, so please go read all of this for yourself. You'll find it there if you're interested. It's very apparent these articles are meant to get people to a Bible study. I know, because each comment is filled with hyperlinks inviting just such a course, taking you to other places in the Watchtower Library. Here is one of the scriptures they say the Bible promotes tolerance. They mention Joshua 24:15, which says, quote, "Choose for yourselves today whom you will serve," end quote. Their comment, "When we respect the right of others to make their own choices, we promote peace," end quote. Okay, you gotta be kidding me. Thank you to Heavens 11 for including this Bible verse for consideration. Okay, what can this verse teach me about being more tolerant of other people's choices and promoting peace? Well, I think I'll start with the verse, and I know there's probably somebody out there that hates it, but I gotta do it because it's the way my brain works. How about we start with this verse and the guy who wrote it, its author? Would you look at that? It was written by Joshua. Please note at this point that scholars believe the book's author is anonymous, but that's not true of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. They say Joshua wrote the book of Joshua himself. They're the only ones who believe that, but you know. How they know? Just take my word for it, bro. That's the way it rolls. The Insight book has an interesting write-up. But put that aside. What can Joshua and this verse teach me about tolerating non-Jehovah's Witness beliefs, choices, and actions in 2024? Well, let me sum it up for you. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Why, you say or ask? Because the brilliant kings in New York want us to learn tolerance, and they may have chosen the most intolerant man in the entire Bible to quote from. You can't make this stuff up. I recently covered Joshua, you might remember. It's Joshua that inspires the newest governing body member, Jody Gentily. His words, not mine. The verse Joshua 24:15 simply states, quote, "Choose for yourselves whom you will serve," end quote. Or what? Or what? I'm sure they put this in the article because Joshua was known, for his tolerance of other religions and their people, right? I'm worshiping Jehovah. You can worship whoever you want. One day they'll make a 60s song about us all living in perfect harmony, right? Right? That's tolerance. Well, hold tight. One only needs to read the book of Joshua to see that it should be the very last book anyone should ever quote when discussing how to be tolerant of other people. It should be the one book you don't point to. I still can't believe this. One could very easily argue that Joshua and anything he had to say was a masterclass on intolerance. Joshua killed tens of thousands of people. He hung kings on poles. He openly bragged about killing women and babies, as well as innocent animals. Why, you ask? Because Jehovah wasn't about to tolerate them in his land. It's unbelievable. Joshua? You want to say Joshua teaches you tolerance? The man was a murdering machine. Why? Because they didn't worship Jehovah, and they were in his front yard. He wanted them out. I can't believe this saw the light of day. Deuteronomy chapter 20, verses 16 through 18 of the New World Translation tells us this about Joshua, the master of tolerance. Quote, "But in the cities of these people, which Jehovah your God is giving you as an inheritance, you must not allow any breathing thing to live. Instead, you should devote them completely to destruction. The Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. just as Jehovah your God has commanded you. He is the tolerant God, after all, so that they may not teach you to follow all their detestable practices that they have done for their gods, causing you to sin against Jehovah your God." End quote. Why was he doing this? Because they didn't worship his God nor follow his ways. But let's use Joshua and a verse about choosing Jehovah in 2024 to teach Jehovah's Witnesses about tolerance. What? How can you quote anything from Joshua when he was anything but tolerant? He was a killing machine. He killed an estimated 80,000 people, including babies. So, outside of dirty diapers and crying in the middle of the night, what is there to tolerate? This article, all of it, is how Jehovah's Witnesses are taught to reason on things. Be like Joshua. He was so tolerant, he told people, choose who you want to serve, so he must have been a tolerant guy. He said, make a choice. He's very tolerant. But please, don't look at what happened when you didn't choose the way he wanted you to. By the way, this is in line with the governing body's version of tolerance. Wouldn't you agree? This article is dripping in ignorance. Jehovah's Witnesses as a people are not tolerant of people that do not agree with them. They're removed, shunned, treated as dead, even if they're your own kids or family. Allow me to point to some modern day example almost any Jehovah's Witness can relate to. Don't worry, no one is going to kill sheep or donkeys like Joshua did. A modern day example. This one drove me nuts. When I was an elder, I gave a lot of public talks. The outlines for those talks drove me insane. Completely insane. Every single outline started with 10 to 15 minutes of me bashing other people's religions. It drove me nuts. I would imagine people dragging themselves to the Kingdom Hall on a Sunday to hear me spend 15 minutes reminding them how intolerant Jehovah's Witnesses are of other people's faith. The special talk outlines given after the memorial were the worst of the worst, an ongoing diatribe of how evil other religions are and what was going to happen to them. Making fun of their doctrines such as hellfire or the immortal soul, repeating headlines from tragedies involving other churches. False religion was anything not Jehovah's Witnesses. And every talk started with vitriol. I found myself preparing these talks looking for examples of Jesus in the Bible, starting each parable or each one of his sermons by bashing every other religion on earth. But you guessed it, I couldn't find it. I couldn't find one. But the writers of the public talk outlines, I'm telling you folks, and there's many of you former elders or just witnesses that can relate to this, it was a guaranteed section in every talk, every public talk. You would hear it at every convention, every symposium. Every Watchtower study featured their obsession with zero tolerance for any faith outside of Jehovah's Witnesses. The entire religion of Jehovah's Witnesses is built on intolerance. The entire religion. What is the preaching work for? What is the messaging in the publications? There is nothing tolerant about Jehovah's Witnesses. And the world knows it. But what is even funnier, it looks like I'm not the only one who noticed this. From the June 8th, 1985 Awake from our readers, page 28, they got a letter that cannot be corroborated that said this, quote, "I would like to thank you for your varied, well-chosen, and upbuilding articles. As a school teacher and mother, I particularly appreciate Young People Ask series. Your scientific articles also provide interesting information that I do not hesitate to pass on to my pupils, for I am sure that your articles are objective and honest. Notice this, quote, "The only thing that upsets me a little, although I understand your reasons, is the way you constantly tear down other religions. Although I'm neither Catholic nor a Buddhist, I feel ill at ease with such articles and avoid them." End quote. FS from France. Would you look at that? It literally is a way of life in their publications and in each of their talks. Intolerance. From the Watchtower, February 15th, 1975, page 128, questions from the readers. Apparently, there was more than just me noticing this as a kid. Someone wrote in the question, quote, "Why do Jehovah's Witnesses so strongly condemn other religions? Do they not believe that there are good people in all faiths?" End quote. I want to remind you, this article is about tolerating people. The comments in the article are this, quote, "What Jehovah's Christian Witnesses," interesting use, "say about the religions of this world is not for the purpose of condemning people." Oh, is that so? Sorry. Okay, back to the quote. "They are making known what God himself has set forth in his word. Like their exemplar Jesus Christ, Jehovah's Witnesses call attention to unscriptural religious traditions and teachings, hypocritical actions, and religious exploitation and expression." End quote. Listen. This all sounds very nice, right? Even though all of us listening know that this is an outright lie. The very foundation of Jehovah's Witnesses is calling every other faith false religion. Babylon the Great. We could go on and on about the illustrations of people getting murdered, fire from the sky, and anyone who didn't get baptized to be a Jehovah's Witness. As an example, don't forget this. It too, by the way, shows how tolerant Jehovah's Witnesses are of other faiths. It comes to us from the reasoning from the scriptures, pages 203 and 204, where it says, quote, "The Bible does not agree with the modern view that there are many acceptable ways to worship God." Ephesians 4:5 says, "There is one Lord, one faith." Jesus stated, "Narrow is the gate and cramped the road leading off into life, and few are the ones finding it." Because Jehovah's Witnesses base all of their beliefs, their standards for conduct, and organizational procedures on the Bible, their faith in the Bible itself as God's Word gives them the conviction that what they have is indeed the truth. So their position is not egotistical. End quote. Reasoning from the scriptures. Sounds very tolerant, doesn't it? And again, they're pointing at the Bible as a book of tolerance. Murder and mayhem on all of its pages. So just out of curiosity, remember, what the reasoning book says right here is that Jehovah's Witnesses are, look, we have the truth. We're not egomaniacal. We're just the bee's knees. I mean, we've got the truth. So just out of curiosity then, in an article on tolerance for other people, their beliefs, their practices, their hobbies, whatever it might be, what is it then that Jehovah's Witnesses openly believe will happen to all those that aren't Jehovah's Witnesses? We can all just tolerate each other and our different foibles, right? And live in peace on paradise together, right? Right? That's tolerance after all. Wrong. The Watchtower of 1985, February 1st, pages 3 and 4, the article, "Armageddon from a God of Love?" is the question. The publication says this about the level of tolerance Jehovah and the governing body will have for other people. Quote, "Yes, blood will run deep under the hand of God's executional forces. The 69 million deaths of 2 world wars will pale in comparison to those slain in God's war of Armageddon. Concerning them, the prophet Jeremiah wrote, "Those slain by Jehovah will certainly come to be in that day from one end of the earth clear to the other end of the earth. They will not be bewailed, neither will they be gathered up or be buried. As manure on the surface of the ground they will become. The burning missiles, fiery showers, and other cataclysmic forces that accompany God's judgment will strike terror into the hearts of mankind earthwide. In confusion they will turn each one against his neighbor as God's executional forces strike without regard to age or sex. For God instructs them to show no mercy. Strike. Let not your eye feel sorry, and do not feel any compassion. Old man, young man, and virgin, and little child, and women you should kill off to a ruination." End quote. Watchtower, 1985 of February 1st, page 3. Would you look at that tolerance? It sounds, guy, let's be honest here. It does sound a lot like that guy Joshua. It does. Same stuff. So it looks like Jehovah, well, he's not going to be tolerant after all, in an article telling us all to be tolerant. Are you dizzy yet? Jehovah's not tolerant. The governing body isn't tolerant, and neither are Jehovah's Witnesses. Listen, there are lots of good people in that religion, and most will treat you reasonably or respectfully. But make no mistake, they fully believe whatever they're tolerating today will be cleaned up in the biggest fireworks show that you can even possibly imagine. So they don't worry about it, because we're all going to get whacked anyway. Even virgins. Not sure why that was important, but you got to include people who haven't had sex. Jehovah's Witnesses are not tolerant. And that most especially applies to the leadership. We could go on and on about this subject, but keep it simple. Ask a closeted gay Jehovah's Witness how tolerant the organization is to their lifestyle or their heart. See how tolerant they'll be when you openly encourage going to college. See how tolerant they'll be when you have a birthday party for the 7-year-old, or when you're handing out candy to the kids that come to your door at Halloween. The governing body doesn't even tolerate tight-fitting pants on men. For decades, they didn't tolerate hair on their chins. The website article concludes with a box that is likely to trigger more than a few people. The box is titled, "Are Jehovah's Witnesses tolerant of other people and religions?" It contains the following statement, quote, "We do not force anyone to become or remain one of Jehovah's Witnesses. If a person wants to resign from being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, we respect that person's choice. However, some may wonder, if Jehovah's Witnesses are tolerant of others' beliefs, why do they expel and shun some who used to worship with them?" To learn more, read the article, "Do Jehovah's Witnesses Shun Those Who Used to Belong to Their Religion?" End quote. It's a hyperlink. We don't have the time. It's a subject unto itself. But it is perhaps the most sensitive of subjects when considering tolerance. And that article hyperlinked is one for the ages. I read it. It's grossly insulting. It's a play on words. It's overt manipulation. It's lying. But upon reading the box and noticing the calendar date, I realized I'd fallen into one of their latest public relation attempts to convince the world, looking at you folks in Norway, that they're very tolerant and they don't shun people that just want to leave. They just left. They just decided they weren't going to be a Jehovah's Witness, but we still tolerate them. It's a gross lie. And incidentally, a lie the leaders in Norway didn't buy, despite the governing body's recent attempt the last couple of weeks to doctor their shunning policy. Should be something we discuss on this show. And Norway went, not buying it. They tried to doctor it a little to see if they could get back their annual $1 million check from the Norwegian government. And they saw through it. Tolerance. For anyone who believes a Jehovah's Witness can get baptized and then just decide it's not for them and leave, and they're treated with tolerance and love, think again. This is an overt lie. You could try to use the Bible as a basis for a lot of things. I truly believe, personally, that they all fail. But trying and implying that the Bible preaches tolerance when it is filled with violence, misogyny, hate speech for those that aren't God's chosen people, shaming biological sexuality, and so much more, it's the definition of absurdity. The entire book culminates in a genocide toward those that don't believe the book. There is nothing about the Bible that preaches tolerance. I thought I had a pretty solid list of subjects in my head that the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses should never try to comment on. I was wrong. I just added this one. The subject of tolerance. Shut up. Don't comment on this. Jehovah's Witnesses are among the most intolerant institutions you will ever encounter. Don't believe the lies, no matter how many website articles they pop up there. But I think the funniest thing about them trying to explain how tolerant they are is that they missed the most obvious. And it's this. If the governing body and Jehovah's Witnesses are so tolerant of other people, what they believe in, the way they look, their hobbies, their decisions, why did they have to write this article at all? I want to thank you for being with me this week. Wherever you may be well.